In the annals of the Bible, there shines a figure endowed with incredible strength, destined to play a pivotal role in the deliverance of Israel from their enemies. His name is Samson, and his story begins long before his birth, in the hearts of his parents who yearned for a child. Samson's journey begins with his mother, a woman who for years remained barren, bearing the sorrow of unfulfilled hopes and dreams. One fateful day, while she was alone, an angel of the Lord appeared to her, radiating with divine light and authority. The angel delivered the astonishing message: she would conceive and bear a son who would begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines. This child was to be dedicated to God from birth, a Nazirite who would take no wine, touch no unclean thing, and never cut his hair. Upon hearing the news, she rushed to her husband Manoah to share the miraculous tidings. Manoah, a man of faith, prayed earnestly, asking God to send the angel again to provide further guidance on how to raise the boy. God, in his mercy, answered Manoah's prayers, and the angel returned, reaffirming the divine promise. "Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son," the angel said, instructing them on how to raise their child. Manoah and his wife were overjoyed, their hearts filled with hope as they prepared to welcome this divinely chosen child into their lives. When Samson was born, his parents named him Samson, meaning son, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him as he grew. He was nurtured with love and faith, knowing from an early age that he was chosen for greatness. However, with great strength came great temptation, and the road ahead would not be easy. As Samson matured into a young man, he began to feel the weight of his calling. Yet he was also drawn to the world around him, particularly to the Philistines, whose allure proved difficult to resist. One day, while traveling to Timnah, he encountered a Philistine woman who captivated him. Her beauty, grace, and exotic charm ignited a fire within him that overshadowed the teachings of his parents. He returned home, insisting that his parents arrange a marriage despite their reservations about intermarriage with the enemy. "Get her for me," he declared, "for she is right in my eyes." His parents, bewildered by his choice, reminded him that there were many women among his own people, but Samson insisted, driven by desire. The wedding preparations were filled with festivities, laughter, and an air of excitement. However, beneath the surface lay a brewing storm. During the celebration, Samson posed a riddle to 30 Philistine men. "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." This riddle, rooted in his encounter with a lion he had slain earlier, was meant to showcase his wit and strength, a testament to his confidence. But the Philistines, unable to solve it, pressured his new wife to extract the answer from him. As she wept and pleaded, Samson relented, revealing the secret. The men answered the riddle, and in a fit of rage at their deceit, Samson killed 30 Philistines and took their garments to pay off his wager, returning home in anger, leaving his wife behind. The riddle and the violent aftermath were merely the opening chapters of Samson's tumultuous life. The encounter with the lion was symbolic of his struggles, showcasing his strength, but also foreshadowing the trials that would come from his choices. After slaying the lion, he returned to find bees had made a hive in its carcass, and he took honey from it, breaking his Nazirite vow by touching the dead animal. This pattern of compromise would be a recurring theme in Samson's life. Samson's relationship with his wife soured as tensions escalated. He left her in anger, seeking refuge from the chaos he had created. The Philistines, seeking revenge for the humiliation, burned his wife and her father, a brutal act that only fueled Samson's thirst for vengeance. He retaliated by striking down many Philistines, showcasing the cyclical nature of violence that marked his life and the lives of his people. The tragic end of his marriage served as a harsh reminder of the consequences of his decisions, and Samson's heart was filled with grief and rage. After these events, Samson retreated to the cave of Etam, where he sought solitude. The Philistines assembled to capture him, and the men of Judah, fearing the repercussions, came to bind Samson, bringing him to the Philistines. But the Spirit of the Lord surged within him, and he broke free from his bonds, taking the jawbone of a donkey to slay 1,000 Philistines in a single battle. This extraordinary victory established his reputation as a judge and warrior, but it also deepened the animosity between him and the Philistines. In the aftermath of the battle, Samson experienced a moment of profound thirst and weariness. He cried out to God, acknowledging his need for divine sustenance. God, in his mercy, provided water from a hollow place in the ground, revitalizing Samson and reminding him of the strength that comes from reliance on the Lord. This moment was pivotal, showing Samson that even in his strength, he must remain humble and dependent on God's grace. As Samson continued to navigate his role as a judge and deliverer, he fell in love with another Philistine woman, Delilah. Living in the valley of Sorek, Delilah represented a new challenge, one that would ultimately lead to his downfall. The Philistine rulers approached her, offering a substantial reward to discover the secret of Samson's strength. They sought to exploit his weaknesses, knowing that they could use Delilah to bring him down. Delilah, aware of the risks, agreed to betray Samson. She began to press him daily, asking for the secret of his strength. At first, he teased her with false answers, claiming that binding him with 7 fresh bowstrings would render him weak, or that tying his hair in a loom would defeat him. Each time, Delilah would call for the Philistines to capture him, but he would break free, leaving her frustrated and the Philistines humiliated. However, the relentless pleading from Delilah took its toll. Overcome by her persistence, Samson finally revealed the truth. His strength lay in his uncut hair, a symbol of his lifelong dedication to God. That night, as he slept, Delilah summoned a man to shave his head, robbing him of his strength and betraying the sacred vow he had held since birth. The moment Samson's hair fell to the ground, so too did his power, a tragic reminder of how vulnerability can stem from misplaced trust. When Samson awoke, he realized too late that the Spirit of the Lord had departed from him. The Philistines seized him, gouging out his eyes and taking him to Gaza, where they bound him in chains and forced him to grind grain in prison. This punishment was not just physical, it was deeply humiliating for a man who had once been a symbol of strength and defiance. The torment of losing his vision mirrored his spiritual blindness, as he was now powerless to see the consequences of his past actions. In prison, Samson was forced to confront the consequences of his choices. He had once been a judge, a deliverer, and now he was a blind slave, grinding grain in a dark prison cell. Yet even in captivity, God was not finished with him. Over time, his hair began to grow back, symbolizing hope and the possibility of redemption. During this time, Samson reflected on his life, the mistakes he had made, and the paths he had chosen. He had strayed far from his calling, but in his heart, he yearned for restoration. Meanwhile, the Philistines celebrated their victory. They gathered in great numbers for a festival to honor their god, Dagon, rejoicing in their triumph over Samson. They brought him out to entertain them, mocking him, belittling him for his downfall. Samson, humiliated and blind, was led to the temple of Dagon, where thousands of Philistines filled the arena, cheering and reveling in the spectacle. Their laughter and jeers echoed in the halls of the temple, a stark contrast to the man who once stood tall among them, a man who had struck fear in their hearts. In the midst of this chaos, Samson called to the young servant who guided him, asking to be placed between the two central pillars of the temple. With his heart filled with both sorrow and resolve, he prayed to God for one last act of strength. "Sovereign Lord, remember me," he cried. "Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." This prayer, a mix of desperation and faith, marked a turning point. Samson recognized his failures but sought forgiveness and empowerment from the God he had once served so zealously. As he pushed against the pillars, a surge of power coursed through him. The temple began to shake, and with a tremendous roar, the structure collapsed, killing Samson and thousands of Philistines in the ruins. In that final act of defiance and faith, Samson fulfilled his destiny, destroying more enemies in his death than in his life, bringing justice to his people. The scene was one of chaos and destruction, yet in it, a sliver of triumph shone through, for Samson had returned to the God who had chosen him from the beginning. In the aftermath, the Israelites mourned Samson, recognizing the complexity of his life. He was not merely a man of great strength, but a flawed hero who struggled with temptation, pride, and ultimately redemption. His life serves as a poignant reminder of God's grace, illustrating that even in our darkest moments, there is hope for restoration. Samson's story transcends the pages of the Bible, speaking to the hearts of all who grapple with their own vulnerabilities, reminding us that our strength does not come from ourselves, but from God. As we reflect on Samson's life, we see a man caught in the tension between divine calling and human frailty. His story encourages us to embrace our imperfections and seek redemption, reminding us that God can use even our failures for His glory. May we be inspired by Samson's journey, understanding that our worth is not defined by our mistakes, but by the grace of God that empowers us to rise again,